Have you ever woken up one day and thought, why am I doing all this? Working, studying, chasing goals. For what? If one day everything's going to end anyway, what's the point? This question bothers us because it touches on something we all feel, but few have the courage to say out loud. Albert Camus, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, didn't run from it. He looked straight at this frightening question and found an answer that can completely change how you see your own life. Before we begin, this video addresses deep existential questions in a philosophical and educational way. If you're going through a difficult time, know that there are professionals and people ready to help. Imagine a man condemned to push an enormous rock to the top of a mountain. When he finally gets there, exhausted, the rock rolls back down, and he has to start over. Again and again, forever. This is Sisyphus, a character from an ancient Greek myth that the gods punished in the worst possible way, an eternal and completely meaningless task. Seems cruel, doesn't it? But Camus looked at this story and saw something different. He saw all of us. Because deep down, isn't our life kind of like that? We wake up, work, sleep, wake up again. We chase after things that never completely satisfy us. We achieve something, and soon we're already pursuing the next goal. It's a cycle that doesn't stop. So Camus asked a strange question. What if Sisyphus is happy? What if there's a way to find joy even in a life that seems to have no final purpose? This crazy idea is what we're going to explore now. To understand Camus's answer, we first need to understand the problem he identified. He called it the absurd. It's not a complicated word, but what it means here is specific. The absurd happens when two things come into conflict. On one side, we have us, human beings, asking questions. We want to know why we exist, what our purpose is, what happens after everything ends, if there's any greater meaning in all of this. These questions are natural. They've been inside us forever. But on the other side, we have the universe. And the universe doesn't answer. It simply continues existing, indifferent to our anxieties. The stars don't care about our problems. Nature follows its rules without worrying whether they make sense to us or not. This clash between our need for answers and the silence of the world is what Camus calls the absurd. Imagine shouting in a huge cave and not even hearing an echo. It's that feeling of emptiness, that no matter how much you search, you won't find a definitive answer coming from outside. You can look at the sky, you can study science, you can dive into philosophy, but in the end, you always get that feeling. So what? What's the point of all this anyway? Camus realized that this feeling isn't our fault. It's not because we're stupid or because we haven't searched hard enough. It's simply the human condition. We're born programmed to seek meaning in a universe that offers none. And this is where things get heavy. Because if life really has no meaning, if we're trapped in this absurd situation with no way out, why continue? Camus went straight to the point, saying that this question of whether life is worth continuing is the only truly important philosophical problem. He wasn't being dramatic. He was being honest. If you conclude that life is worth nothing, that there's no purpose, that everything is empty, then logically, this deep doubt arises. It's a logical and frightening conclusion. Many thinkers fled from this question or danced around it. Camus planted his feet on the ground and said, "Let's face this head on. The question isn't whether life is absurd, it is. The question is, what do we do about it?" Before showing his answer, Camus needed to discard the answers he considered false. The most common of these is the religious one. When life seems meaningless, many people turn to God, to faith, to the idea that there's something greater that gives purpose to everything. There's a divine plan. There's life after everything ends. There's reward in heaven. This answer comforts millions of people, and Camus wasn't saying they're wrong to believe, but he called this a philosophical escape. Why? Because it's giving up on facing the absurd. It's inventing a comforting answer instead of dealing with harsh reality. It's like covering your ears when someone says something you don't want to hear. For Camus, accepting these ready-made answers is betraying intellectual honesty. It's pretending the absurd doesn't exist instead of looking at it. Of course, it's easier to believe that everything has a hidden purpose, that one day everything will make sense, that there's a plan. But Camus wanted something different. He wanted an answer that didn't depend on inventing a world beyond this one. An answer that would work even if the universe is really silent and indifferent. An answer that would maintain human dignity without needing supernatural crutches. And he found this answer in an unexpected place. The first part of Camus's answer is revolt. We're not talking about picking up weapons or making political revolution. The revolt here is internal. It's an attitude. It's saying no to the absurd. But careful. It's not denying that the absurd exists. It's refusing to be crushed by it. It's like a boxer who knows he's going to get hit, but stays on his feet, keeps fighting. Revolt is this human stubbornness of not surrendering. The universe has no meaning. Fine, but I'm not just going to passively accept this and give up. I'm also not going to invent false stories to make myself feel better. I'm going to look the absurd in the face and say, I'm still here. You don't beat me. This revolt has something beautiful about it. It's affirming our humanity precisely at the moment when everything seems useless. It's keeping consciousness clear even when it would be easier to sleep. Camus admired this stance because it requires courage. It requires you to stay in the uncomfortable tension between wanting meaning and not finding any. Most people can't handle this tension. They either plunge into blind faith or plunge into despair. But there's a third option. Stay there, conscious, revolted, alive. And from this revolt, something surprising is born. If there's no meaning given from outside, if there's no God dictating what we should do, if there's no cosmic instruction manual, then something liberating happens. We're completely free. Think about it. You spend your whole life thinking you need to follow certain rules, meet certain expectations, achieve certain goals because that's how things should be. But what if it's not? What if nobody's keeping score? What if there's no final judge evaluating whether you lived right or wrong? Suddenly, all those obligations you were carrying on your back fall away. You can choose your own values. You can decide what matters to you, not based on what you were told, but on what you really feel and think. This freedom is scary because it's total. It's easier when someone tells you what to do. But it's also the greatest gift of the absurd. You don't need to live to please gods, satisfy social expectations, or reach some predetermined destiny. Your life is yours, completely yours. And that means you can fill it however you want. Of course, there are practical limits, real consequences, other people to consider. But philosophically, existentially, you're free from the invisible chains that bind those who still seek meaning outside themselves. But freedom alone isn't enough. Camus wasn't proposing that you simply do whatever you feel like without thinking. The second part of his answer is more interesting: passion. If life has no predetermined meaning, if we're not here to fulfill some sacred mission, then what's left? Living remains. Simply living, but not just any way. Living with maximum intensity. Living as much as possible. Experiencing, feeling, knowing, loving, creating. The idea is simple. Since the amount of time is limited and we don't know how much we have, what matters is the quality and intensity of experiences. Camus wasn't talking about living irresponsibly or hedonistically in a shallow sense. It's not about partying every day or empty pleasures. It's about being present. It's about feeling your life happening instead of letting it pass while you're stuck in worries about the future or regrets about the past. How many times are you physically in one place but your mind is somewhere else? How many conversations do you have where you're not really there? How many experiences do you miss because you're thinking about the next one? Camus proposes the opposite. Dive into the now, because now is all that truly exists. This connects with an idea that might seem strange. The absurd man has no hope. Before getting scared, understand what he means. Hope, in the traditional sense, is projecting your happiness into the future. I'll be happy when I graduate. I'll be happy when I get that job. I'll be happy when I retire. Always a later, always a not yet. The problem is that while you wait for this future, the present slips through your fingers. You spend your whole life postponing real life. Camus says, stop waiting. Hope robs you of the present. What he offers instead of hope isn't despair, it's presence. It's living this moment, not because it will take you somewhere better, but because it's all you have. It sounds simple, but it's revolutionary. It means you don't need external justifications to enjoy a sunset. You don't need this moment to serve something greater. It can simply be lived, felt, appreciated, and that's enough. This is the passion Camus talks about. It's not fire that burns and passes. It's a way of being in the world, totally present, totally alive, without leaning on promises that things will get better or make sense someday. Now let's go back to Sisyphus, because everything starts to make sense. Remember him? Condemned to push that rock forever, never achieving anything, never getting anywhere. Sounds like the perfect definition of life without meaning, right? But Camus says a strange thing. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. What do you mean? How could anyone in that situation be happy? The answer is in everything we've talked about so far. Sisyphus isn't waiting for the rock to finally stay at the top. He knows that will never happen. He's not believing the gods will forgive him someday. He's not inventing stories about life after everything ends where he'll be rewarded. Sisyphus simply pushes the rock, and in this pushing, he finds something of his own. The struggle is his, the rock is his, the effort is his. Nobody can take that from him. When he walks down the mountain to start over, he's conscious of everything. He doesn't deceive himself. He knows exactly what his situation is, but he chooses to continue. And in this conscious choice, in this revolt against futility, in this decision to do his work even without reward, he finds dignity, he finds freedom, and yes, he finds a strange form of happiness, not the happiness of someone who got what they wanted, the happiness of someone who accepted what is and even so decided to live fully. You might be thinking, this is beautiful in theory, but how does this work in practice? How do you be an absurd man in real life? Camus offered some examples, some archetypes of people who live this philosophy without maybe even knowing it. Think of the conqueror. We're not talking about crazy emperors, but any person who acts, who does things, who launches into projects, knowing that in the end, everything will end anyway. This conqueror doesn't act because he believes in eternal victory. He acts because acting is living. The action itself is already the reward. Or think of the actor. He lives multiple lives, multiple characters. He experiences emotions and situations he would never live otherwise. And when the play ends, he doesn't get desperate. He knows it was fiction, that it was temporary, but he lived it intensely while it lasted. This is living absurdly, diving completely into experiences without needing them to be eternal or have purpose beyond themselves. Each role, each experience, each moment has its own value, not because it leads somewhere, but because it's lived. There's also the lover who multiplies experiences of love and connection, not because he's looking for the perfect person who will complete him eternally, but because each encounter, each connection, each love is unique and intense. The absurd man doesn't romanticize. He doesn't believe in soulmates or destinies. But precisely because of this, he values each person, each shared moment, knowing it's precious exactly because it's temporary and doesn't need greater justification. Now I'll give you a very specific and everyday example, because maybe you're thinking, okay, but I work in an office doing repetitive bureaucratic tasks. How do I find revolt and passion in that? I learned about a guy named Roberto who works in the filing section of a large company. Every day, he organizes documents, types data, files papers. Seems like the most monotonous job in the world, right? For years, Roberto lived on autopilot. He'd wake up, go to work hating every minute, come home exhausted and frustrated. He lived waiting for the weekend, waiting for vacation, waiting for retirement. One day, after reading about these ideas, he changed his perspective. He didn't change jobs. He changed his attitude. First, he stopped waiting for the work to serve something grandiose. He accepted it was just bureaucratic work. But then he started looking for small moments of presence and choice within that routine. He decided he was going to do his work with total attention, not because someone was demanding it, but because it was his choice to do it well. Each correctly filed document became a small personal victory. He started really noticing his co-workers, having real conversations instead of just exchanging formalities. He discovered interesting stories, made genuine friendships. He created a ritual of having coffee before starting work, 5 minutes just for himself, tasting it, looking out the window, being completely present in that moment. He stopped mentally complaining all the time about how boring the work was and started accepting, this is it, this is my job now. It doesn't have to be my passion, but I can choose how I live these 8 hours. The work remained bureaucratic, but Roberto changed. He was no longer waiting for life to start after work. He was living during work too. It wasn't explosive happiness. It was something more subtle, a feeling of being present, of making conscious choices, of being alive even within routine. This is absurd revolt applied. It's not dramatic, it's not heroic, it's silent and personal. It's Sisyphus pushing the rock with dignity. These examples show something important. Living absurdly isn't sad or nihilistic. It's the opposite. It's living with more intensity because you're not trapped by unrealistic expectations. You're not frustrated because life doesn't match some script someone sold you. You're present, conscious, free. And from this freedom comes a greater capacity to really experience life. But here, we need to make a crucial distinction, because there's a lot of confusion about this. Camus wasn't a nihilist. Nihilism is the idea that nothing matters. So whatever, you can do what you want, because in the end, everything's lost anyway. That's not what Camus is saying. Quite the contrary. Precisely because there's no cosmic meaning is that each moment matters immensely. If this life is all we have, if there's nothing waiting after, then every second is precious. Every choice weighs. Every action has real consequences. The nihilist says, nothing matters, so I can destroy, I can hurt, I can do whatever I want. The absurdist says, nothing comes from outside to give meaning, so I give meaning, and I choose to live fully and consciously. It's a huge difference. One is giving up. The other is affirmation. One is passive and destructive. The other is active and creative. Camus was proposing that you build your own values, not that you abandon all value. And this brings us to another fundamental point: solidarity. When you recognize the absurd, when you accept that you're in this impossible situation of seeking meaning where there is none, you realize something. Everyone's in the same boat. Every person you see on the street who crosses your path, who lives their life, is facing the same absurd. We're all pushing our rocks up the mountain. We're all trying to make sense of what doesn't have any. And this shared consciousness can generate genuine compassion. You don't need religion to feel connection with other people. You don't need ideology to recognize that others' suffering is real and matters. In fact, when you remove these layers of beliefs that separate people into groups, the saved and the lost, the right and the wrong, the faithful and the unfaithful, what remains is purer. Human beings facing a difficult condition together. This can create a form of love and solidarity that doesn't depend on you and the other agreeing about the meaning of life. It only depends on recognizing that you're both alive, both conscious, both matter. There's also a dimension of Camus' answer that he valued greatly: creation, art, specifically. The artist is perhaps the perfect example of the absurd man. Why? Because the artist creates knowing that his creation won't solve the world's problems. A painting doesn't feed anyone. A poem doesn't cure diseases. A song doesn't bring back who's gone. In this sense, art is completely useless. But it's exactly in this uselessness that its beauty lives. The artist creates because he needs to create. Because expressing, giving form, imagining, building worlds is a fundamental way of being alive. Artistic creation multiplies the world. Each work is a new way of seeing, feeling, experiencing. And the artist isn't trying to explain the world or give final meaning to it. He's just adding more layers, more possibilities, more experiences. Is it absurd? Totally. Is it valuable? Immensely. You don't need to be a professional artist to live this. Any creative act, however small, is a form of absurd revolt. It's saying, I exist, I feel, I create, and this doesn't need justification. Now you might be wondering, okay, I understood the philosophy, but how do I apply this in my Monday life, when I wake up early, sit in traffic, work at something that doesn't excite me much, and come home tired? How do you be happy Sisyphus when life is boring and repetitive? It's a fair question, and the answer isn't magic. It's not like you wake up one day enlightened and suddenly everything makes sense. But there are small changes that make a difference. First, stop postponing your life. How many things don't you do because you're waiting for the right moment? When you have more money, more time, more security, when the situation improves, when? The right moment doesn't exist. There's only this moment. If you want to have a difficult conversation, have it now. If you want to do something you've always put off, start today. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to happen. Every day that passes, waiting for the perfect future, is a day you didn't really live. Second, question what you do out of obligation versus what you do by choice. Obviously, you can't just drop everything and live like a hippie on the beach. We have real responsibilities. But even within these responsibilities, there's room for choice. Do you work at this job because you really want to, or because you think you should want to? Do you maintain certain relationships because they're meaningful, or because it's what you do? Do you pursue certain goals because they're yours, or because you absorbed that you should pursue them? Asking these questions is already an act of absurd revolt. It's starting to build a life that's really yours. Third, practice being present. This might sound like cheap self-help, but it's not. It's difficult and requires training. When you're eating, really taste the flavor. When you talk with someone, really listen. When you walk down the street, notice what's around you. Our brain lives on autopilot. We do things mechanically while our mind is somewhere else. Fighting against this, forcing yourself to be here and now, is a way of living with more intensity. And intensity is what the absurd man seeks. Fourth, accept that you're going to leave one day and that everything will end. Sounds morbid, but it's liberating. When you really accept your finitude, small things that stressed you lose importance. That silly fight, that worry about what others think, that fear of making mistakes. If everything's going to end anyway, why waste your limited time on that? Better to use that time to live, to experience, to be with those you love, to do what makes you feel alive. The end isn't the enemy. It's the frame that gives contour and value to life. Fifth, create your own rituals and values. You don't need the ones that were passed to you if they don't make sense to you. What really matters to you? Justice? Beauty? Knowledge? Love? Adventure? There's no right answer, but be honest with yourself, and then live according to these values you consciously chose. This isn't selfishness, it's authenticity. And authentic people tend to be more generous and present with others because they're not spending energy pretending to be what they're not. There's something also about work and repetition. Many people hate the feeling that every day is the same. Wake up, do the same things, sleep, repeat. Seems like a prison. But remember Sisyphus? His life is literally the same task eternally. And still, Camus says he can be happy. How? Finding meaning in the act itself, not in the result. If you can find something in the process, something that connects you with what you're doing, repetition stops being a prison and becomes rhythm. Becomes your rhythm. This doesn't mean you need to love every second of your work. It means you can find small moments of presence, of choice, of humanity even within routine. It can be a good conversation with a colleague. It can be doing something well for the simple pleasure of doing it well. It can be an instant of silence with your coffee before starting the day. These details seem small, but they're what make a life. Life isn't made of the big moments. It's made of thousands of small moments, and you have some control over how you live each one of them. Another important point: be careful with comparisons. The social media era turned comparison into a sport. Everyone seems to be living incredible lives, achieving impressive goals, being happy all the time. But this is an illusion. First, because people only show what they want to show. Second, because even if it were real, it doesn't matter. Someone else's life has nothing to do with yours. If you've accepted the absurd, if you've understood there's no right script, then it doesn't make sense to measure your life by someone else's ruler. Your only responsibility is to live your life as fully and consciously as possible. And that's different for everyone. There's also the question of failure. Our society is terrified of failure. But if you embrace the absurd, failure loses much of its power. Because in the end, everything's going to crumble anyway. You're going to leave. Your achievements will disappear. Your name will be forgotten. This isn't depressing, it's liberating. It means you can try things without being afraid of failing. You can make a fool of yourself. You can experiment. You can change your mind. After all, what's the worst that can happen? Nothing matters in the end from a cosmic point of view. So you're free to do what matters to you now, without the crushing weight of having to be perfect or leave an eternal legacy. And what about others? How do you relate to people when you accept that nothing has ultimate meaning? Curiously, it gets easier, not harder, because you're not putting unrealistic expectations on anyone. You're not waiting for someone to complete you or give meaning to your life. You're not judging others for not living according to some absolute standard. You simply meet people, share moments, experience connections. Some will be deep and last. Others will be brief and pass. Both have value. Both are part of the experience of being alive. Love, specifically, becomes more real. Because you don't love someone because God determined it, or because it's destiny, or because this person will fill an existential void inside you. You love because you choose to love. Because being with this person makes you feel alive. Because sharing experiences with them multiplies the intensity of being in the world. And when it ends, if it ends, you're not destroyed looking for the hidden meaning of the loss. You feel the pain, which is real, but you also know that what you lived was real and valuable while it lasted. Children also enter this conversation. Many people have children looking for meaning, continuity, immortality through descendants. But if you start from the absurd, you have children for other reasons, because you want to share the experience of being alive with a new being. Because creating and educating someone is an intense way of living. Because love is a multiplier of experiences. But you don't put on your children the responsibility of giving meaning to your life or continuing your legacy. You let them be themselves, face their own absurd, find their own path. One thing that sometimes goes unnoticed in Camus' philosophy is that it's not solitary. Even though it's about each person finding their own way of dealing with the absurd, this doesn't mean isolation. On the contrary, when you free yourself from the need to convince others that your way of seeing the world is right, you can finally meet people for real. You don't need them to believe what you believe. It's enough that they exist, that they're human, that they share this absurd condition with you. And that's enough for genuine connection. Politics and society can also be seen through this lens. You don't fight for justice because some God commanded it, or because history is inevitably marching toward progress. You fight because it's your choice, because it's how you decide to live your revolt against the absurd. You help others not because you'll earn points in heaven, but because you recognize in them the same struggle that exists in you. This kind of ethics isn't less strong for not having a transcendent foundation. It's even stronger because it comes from real choice, not from obedience. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Most people don't want to think about these things. They prefer ready-made answers, prefabricated meanings, comfortable certainties. And that's okay. Everyone deals with life the way they can. But if you're watching this, if these ideas resonate with you, it's because you're one of those who can't simply accept without questioning. You feel the absurd. And now you have a way of dealing with it that isn't giving up and isn't deluding yourself. It's a third way. It's the way of happy Sisyphus. Implementing this doesn't happen overnight. It's not a one-time decision. It's daily practice. Every day you wake up and the absurd is there. Every day you need to choose again. Am I going to run away? Am I going to give up? Or am I going to revolt and live? Some days are easier. Other days the rock seems too heavy. but the choice remains yours. And the more you practice being present, creating your values, living intensely, the more natural this becomes. One last thing about Sisyphus. Camus focuses a lot on the moment when he walks down the mountain after the rock rolled back. That moment of pause. Sisyphus walks back down, alone, conscious that he's going to start everything over. In this moment, he's totally lucid. He knows exactly what his situation is, and it's in this moment that he can choose. He can despair. He can revolt with anger, or he can simply accept, breathe, and start over. This moment of descent, this moment of clear consciousness, is as human as possible. It's where our freedom lives. It's where our dignity lives. It's where, strangely, our joy lives. Life is absurd. That's a fact. But within this absurd, you have space to create, to love, to fight, to experience, to be truly alive. You don't need cosmic permission. You don't need divine purpose. You don't need a traced destiny. You just need to choose every day to push your rock with consciousness and presence. And in this repeated choice, in this stubbornness to continue even knowing there's no glorious final destination, you find something that no external meaning could give you. You find your own humanity, complete and authentic. So, if life has no meaning, why live? Camus' answer is simple and profound. Because you can. Because being alive is better than not being. Because each moment lived consciously is your small victory over the silence of the universe. Because you don't need grandiose reasons to justify your existence. Your existence justifies itself. And when you fully accept this, when you stop looking for explanations that will never come and simply start living, something magical happens. You realize the question was wrong from the beginning. Life doesn't need to have meaning to be worthwhile. In fact, it's exactly because it has no meaning imposed from outside that you can give it whatever meaning you want. You're free, completely free. And with this freedom comes responsibility, yes, but also infinite possibility. Every day is a blank page. Every choice is yours. Every moment can be lived fully or wasted. It only depends on you. Sisyphus pushes his rock. The rock rolls back, and he walks down, conscious, to start over. And us? We wake up, live our day, sleep, wake up again. Seems repetitive, seems meaningless. But we can be like Sisyphus. We can find our strange happiness in this repetition. We can make each climb a conscious experience. We can choose our attitude. We can revolt against the absurd by continuing to live, continuing to try, continuing to feel. And that, in the end, is everything. It's enough. It's more than enough. If this way of seeing life makes sense to you, if these ideas touch something inside you, then you're already on the path. The path of Sisyphus, the path of the absurd man. It's a path with no final destination, but it's a path you choose consciously. And in this choice lives all the difference. It's not easy. It was never promised it would be, but it's real, it's honest, and it's deeply human. So, why live if life has no meaning? Because living is your way of saying yes to existence, even when existence gives you no reason to do so. It's your revolt. It's your freedom. It's your humanity. And you, modern Sisyphus, can be happy. If you made it this far and these ideas resonated with you, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel to keep exploring philosophy and different ways of seeing life. Share with someone who needs to hear this. And most importantly, get out of here and live. Push your rock with consciousness. Be your own happy Sisyphus. Until next time.